there are a lot of entrepreneurs and people pursuing dreams and passions in this. God, you always, the whole point of moving things forward is you run into problems, you run into failures, things don't work, you have to back up and try again. Each one of those times when you have a setback and you back up and you try again, you're using resourcefulness, you're using self-reliance, you're trying to invent your way out of a box. And we have tons of examples at Amazon where we've had to do this. We've failed so many times. I always think of us as a great place to fail because we're good at it. We have so much practice. And just to give you one example, many years ago now, we wanted a third-party selling business because we knew we could add selection to the store that way. And we started Amazon auctions. Nobody came. I think maybe our mother is the only one who purchased something on Amazon auctions. I bought a coffee cup. You bought a coffee cup?
I did.
Okay, so there were 2 purchasers. And then we said, well, what can we do? We opened this thing called Z Shops, which was like fixed price auctions. Again, nobody came.
I didn't use that.
And then finally, and each one of these failures is like a year and a half long. And so we're trying to invent new things. And we finally came across this idea of putting the third-party selection on the same detail pages, the same product detail pages that we had our own inventory on, our own retail inventory on. We called this marketplace, and it started working right away. And so that resourcefulness of trying new things, figuring things out, what do customers really want, it pays off in everything. How do you help your children? What's the right thing? My wife has a great saying. We let our kids use, even now they're 17 through 12, but even when they were 4, we would let them use sharp knives, and by the time they were, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8, we'd let them use certain power tools. And my wife, much to her credit, she has this great saying. She said, I would much rather have a kid with 9 fingers than a resourceless kid. When I was telling my friends my criteria, one of the ones that I would list was that I wanted a woman who could get me out of a third world prison. And my friends were like, what are your future plans? What? And I said, no, it's just a visualization for somebody really resourceful, because I think that you don't want to go through life with teammates who aren't resourceful. And so you do want to go through life with people who, if you need, could get you out of a third world prison.
Hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
I went to my boss at the time, and I really liked my job. And I told my boss I was going to go do this thing, start an internet bookstore. And my wife I'd already told my wife, and she's like, great, let's go. And I said to my boss, I was going to do this. He's like, this is a good idea. He says, I think this is a good idea, but it would be an even better idea for somebody who didn't already have a good job. And that sort of made some logical sense to me, and he convinced me to think about it for a couple of days. So I went away, and I was really trying to get my head around how to think about this. And I think, for me, the right way to make that kind of very personal decision, because those decisions are personal. They're not like data-driven business decisions. They are, what does your heart say? And for me, the best way to think about it was to project myself forward to age 80 and say, look, when I'm 80 years old, I want to have minimized the number of regrets that I have. I don't want to be 80 years old in a quiet moment of reflection, thinking back over my life and cataloging a bunch of major regrets. And I think that regrets, our biggest regrets, in most cases, you can murder somebody, okay, you regret that. But in most cases, our biggest regrets turn out to be acts of omission. It's paths not taken, and they haunt us. We wonder, what would have happened? I loved that person, and I never told them. And then they married somebody else. I didn't do this. And so that's the frame of mind that I put myself in. And once I did that, once I thought about it that way, it was immediately obvious to me. I knew that when I'm 80, I would never regret trying this thing that I was super excited about and it failing. If it failed, fine. I would be very proud of the fact when I'm 80 that I tried. And I also knew that it would always haunt me if I didn't try. And so that would be a regret. It would be a 100% chance of a regret if I didn't try, and basically a 0% chance of regret if I tried and failed. Well, long-term thinking is a lever. It lets you do things that you could not do or couldn't even conceive of doing if you were thinking short-term. At Amazon, we probably do most of our things we expect to get some results in sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But we find a lot of our other companies that compete against us in various ways, they're often trying to get things done in 2 or 3 years. And so we can do things that You know, if everything has to work in 2 to 3 years, then that limits what you can do. If you give yourself the breathing room to say, okay, I'm okay if it takes 7 years, all of a sudden you have way more opportunities. Like when I have dinner, whether it's with friends or with my family, and I like to be talking to the people I'm with. I like to do whatever I'm doing. I don't like to multitask. It bothers me. If I'm reading my email, I want to be really reading my email. My mom tells a story about me being in Montessori school, and that they couldn't get me to switch tasks. So the Montessori school teacher would have to literally pick up my chair and just move me to the next task station. So I don't know, it's not like,
it's not intentional.
I don't need discipline in order to not be checking my email. For me, it's very natural. I love being present in what I'm working, and I'm happy multitasking, but I do it serially. You know, I will spend, and you know, honestly, if something really important is happening, somebody will find me. You know, it's not like I have to check my text messages every 5 minutes or something like that. That's not a big deal. You can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. And when you're 80, which one of those things do you think you're going to be more proud of? You're going to be more proud of having chosen a life of service and adventure. So if you want to be an inventor of any kind, inventing a new service offering for customers or a new product or anything, being an inventor requires, because the world is so complicated, you have to be a domain expert. I mean, in a way, even if you're not at the beginning, you have to learn enough so that you become a domain expert. But the danger is once you become a domain expert, you can be trapped by that knowledge. And so inventors have this paradoxical ability to have that, 10,000 hours of practice and be a real domain expert and have that beginner's mind. Have that look at it freshly, even though they know so much about the domain. And that's the key to inventing. You have to have both. And I think that is intentional. I think all of us have that inside of us, and we can all do it, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to say, yeah, I am going to become an expert, and I'm going to keep my beginner's mind. I teach senior executive kind of leadership classes at Amazon for our most senior executives, and I also teach, or not teach, but I also speak to interns, so kind of all across the spectrum. And I get this question about work-life balance all the time from both ends of the spectrum. And my view is I don't even like the phrase work-life balance. I think it's misleading. I like the phrase work-life harmony, because I know that if I am energized at work, happy at work, feeling like I'm adding value, part of a team, whatever energizes you, that makes me better at home. It makes me a better husband, a better father, and likewise, if I'm happy at home, it makes me a better employee, better boss, all the things. It's not primarily about, there may be crunch periods where it's about the number of hours in the week, but that's not the real thing. Usually it's about, do you have energy? And is your work depriving you of energy, or is your work generating energy for you? And there are people, everybody in this room knows people who fall into these two camps. You're in a meeting and the person comes in the room. Some people come into the meeting and they add energy to the meeting. Other people come into the meeting and the whole meeting just deflates. And those people they drain energy from the meeting. And you have to decide which of those kinds of people you're going to be. Are you going to add energy?
And the same thing at home.
And the same thing at home. And it's a wheel, it's a cycle, it's a flywheel, it's a circle. It's not a balance. Because a balance, that's why that metaphor is so dangerous, because it implies there's a strict trade-off. And you could be out of work, have all the time for your family in the world, but really depressed and demoralized about your work situation, and your family wouldn't want to be anywhere near you. They would wish you would take a vacation from them. And so it's not about the number of hours, not primarily. I suppose if you went crazy with, 100 hours a week or something, yeah, that maybe there are limits, and they probably. But I've never had a problem, and I think it's because both sides of my life give me energy, and that's what I would recommend. And that's what I do recommend to interns and execs.
Thank you very much. Thank all of you. I guess there's just one more thing to say.
We should toast.
Yep. To adventure,
To
and
adventure
fellowship.
and fellowship.